Okay, so we got the same session as what we prepped in the last video. So now that everything is all grouped and organized, then we can proceed to the next step and start preparing the session for the editing process. So there's a few things you need to take into consideration before editing. So the first things first, if we look at this display here, there's a few settings we need to adjust to ensure that our session is edit ready, if you like. Where it says C major here, that determines the key signature for our track. In terms of setting that correctly, it won't make a difference whatsoever. This is just more of a preference thing. So if we click on the key signature, you can see a whole bunch of major and minor keys pop up. So if you really want to be on top of things, we can select what key our track is in, but we won't worry about it for now. Above that, where it says 4/4, this is the time signature of our track. So in a nutshell, it determines the amount of beats in the bar. So as we got 4/4 written here, it signifies that there's 4 beats to a bar. So each bar you'll be counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is also known as common time because a lot of music these days is written in 4/4 because it's just what we're used to, and it's the fundamental, I guess you'd call it. So it's set to 4/4 by default, but if we click on the time signature, then we can alter the time signature to different amount of values or beats in the bar. So we could either choose from the menu here, or if we want to get creative, we can go to custom and choose our time signature. So if we wanted to go, let's say 12/8, punch in 12 with the number of beats, and then for the note value, we can just click on 8. And then if we hit return or enter on our keyboard, then that's changed to 12/8. But we'll change it back to 4/4. So with note value, just click on that, select 4, and then number of beats, click on that and just punch in 4. Hit return, and then we're back to 4/4. And then the next important setting we need to deal with is the BPM, where it says 120 there. So if we double click on it, we can then change the BPM. Again, 120 is sort of like a starting off default for a tempo, but if we want to change it to say something ridiculous like 400, we can just type in 400. And our track is now set to 400. So yeah, that's pretty wild. But if we double click on it and go back to 120, then we're back to square one where we started. So after discussing what those options are, what we can do now, what I like to do is have a listen to the track, just a bit of it, just to get a feel for it. And the world moves on through that door. So by listening to it, I can get a feel for the tempo as well as the type of groove and what might be appropriate for it. So what I can do now, if we go to where the metronome is, this is our click track. So if we engage the click, we can listen to it with the click, and this will determine whether or not we need to change both the tempo or the time signature. And the world moves on through that door. Okay, so alarm bells are ringing now, so it's quite clear that both the tempo and the time signature are not correct, and they're not corresponding to the track. So what we'll need to do, we'll need to change it. Lucky for me, I'm familiar with this track, so I know that the tempo is going to be 132 BPM So double click on it and punch in 132. So let's have a listen to it now with the click.
And the world moves on through that door.
Cool, so we've established that the tempo now is corresponding to the track, so everything's in sync on that side of things. When it comes to the time signature, I've noticed that something's not quite right. So it's definitely not 4/4, but what I'm feeling is it could be 6/4 instead. So let's try 6/4. So click on the time signature and let's select 6/4. Change project signature, yep. Okay, let's see how this feels now. Just click on the click. Here we go.
And the world moves on through that door.
Cool. So I'm noticing for the first part of the track, bars 1 and 2, that 6/4 is in sync, whereas when it gets to bar 3, I'm noticing there's a slight change. So just to sort of clarify that, I'll count the beats while playing it again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So as we get to bar 3, you notice how I'm getting out of sync with it as well, with the click. So this track has a bit of a time signature change, which we're going to have to punch in at bar 3. So the way we can do that is with this button here. This is the global tracks menu. So if we click on it, this will open up the options to change the tempo or the time signature if we have it changing in different sections, which this is the case for the time signature. The BPM or tempo still stays the same. So bar 3 it was. So if we just put our playhead right on bar 3, what we can do, we can alter the time signature for that section. So we'll have another listen.
And the world moves on through that door.
So to me, I'm feeling it could be in 5/4 when it gets to bar 3. So with it being in 6/4, we're going one beat over than what it's meant to be. So to punch in the 5/4 time signature in bar 3, if I just right click here on the grade section, then I can just go create time signature. And number of beats, I can just punch in 5. Hit OK or enter. Press OK and there we are. We've changed to 5/4. So let's play the click track now with the track.
And the world moves on through that door.
Aha, we're all of a sudden locking in. So we'll play it again and I'll count the beats just to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. And just for here, we'll change this back to 6/4 because it goes back into the 6/4. So just right click again on our signature, go create time signature, and then the number of beats, just punch in 6 and click OK. So we'll just have another listen to that.
And the world moves on through that door. And day after day, you want me to
Cool. I'll just hide this global track menu. Just click on the same button. If I hold down Option on my keyboard and scroll my mouse up on the wheel, we can zoom in and our waveforms become a lot more visible. If we want to zoom in lengthways, then if I hold down Option and Command, then scroll my mouse wheel up, then we're stretching out our audio tracks and zooming in that way as well. And if we want to zoom out again, still holding down Option and Command, I can scroll my mouse wheel down, then we're zooming out. And the same thing applies to if we're just holding down Option, and if I scroll my mouse wheel down, then we're zooming out and it makes our waveforms less visible. Since we've got the tempo mapped out and the time signature mapped out, just zoom in a bit more here. You can see the first beat of our kick drum is on the first beat of bar 1. And then if we go to bar 2, the first beat of our kick is on the first beat of bar 2. And then bar 3, where we've got that time signature change to 5/4, just to show you the first beat of our kick is practically lining up on bar 3. The same with the first beat on bar 4 until it goes back to 6/4 on bar 5, and the first beat of our kick is on the first beat of bar 5. Obviously, we're humans, we're not robots, so even if we are recording to a click, there's still going to be like milliseconds or so where the first beat will be out. It won't be exactly on the grid, but this is definitely a nice slate to work off because everything's relatively lined up. So either way, it'll still make the editing process a hell of a lot easier. And the same thing applies to if we're using MIDI as well. Luckily with MIDI, it's easier because everything will just quantize right onto the grid. So there's no issues there. As soon as we adjust the tempo or the time signature, our MIDI blocks will just automatically snap to the grid. So everything will just be perfectly tight, whereas we're humans. So having that bit of, looser kind of feel to the performance shows that organicness as well. But as you can see, everything's relatively lined up. Whereas just to experiment, if I change this back to 120, so double click on my BPM where it says 132, and if I go 120, you'd probably notice there that the waveforms have moved slightly. So you can see that first kick hit is not lining up to the first beat of bar 2. It's out of place. So if we try to edit that, then yeah, we're going to have some issues. Whereas if we double click on it again and go back to 132, you can see how automatically our waveforms are now on grid. So the first beat of bar 2 is lining up perfectly to bar 2 and vice versa. So once you get those things dialed into your session, then your editing will be so much more of a breeze and it'll just make the process a lot smoother. So yeah, those are some of my insights and approaches to how I will prepare my session for editing. So hopefully you got a lot out of this, but if there's anything you want me to re-clarify or touch up on, again, reach out to me and be more than happy to help. And for the next video, we're going to be going into the editing process. So keep an eye out for that one. But for now, all the best with your productions and cheers for now.